The year 536, a time of darkness and despair. In 536 CE, a mysterious fog enveloped Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Asia, dimming the sun for 18 months. Temperatures dropped by an average of 2 degrees Celsius, marking the coldest decade in 2 millennia. Crops failed, famine spread, and the Eastern Roman Empire was struck by a plague that claimed a third to half of its population. In 2018, historian Michael McCormick and glaciologist Paul Majewski identified the culprit: a massive volcanic eruption in 535 CE, ejecting ash that blanketed the northern hemisphere. Subsequent eruptions, possibly from Krakatoa and Tavurvur, compounded the catastrophe. The Roman scholar Cassiodorus described the aftermath vividly. The sun's light was weak and bluish, frost ruined harvests, and unseasonal drought prevailed. This volcanic winter set the stage for Justinian's plague, the first documented pandemic of an infectious disease. The plague reached Constantinople a year after emerging in Egypt, carried by black rats on trading ships. Victims suffered hallucinations, nightmares, fevers, and painful swellings. Some died swiftly, while others endured prolonged agony. No one was safe, whether on an island, in a cave, or atop a mountain. Corpses often lay unburied due to a lack of relatives or servants. Economic activity halted as artisans and merchants abandoned their trades. Estimates suggest up to half of Europe's population, and 25 to 100 million globally, perished. The Great Famine of 1315 to 1310. Spring rains in 1315 triggered flooding across northern Europe, from Britain to the Baltics. Temperatures dropped, heralding the Great Famine, which lasted until 1317 and, in some regions, even longer. Livestock diseases killed 80% of cattle, exacerbating food shortages. Crime surged, diseases spread, and cannibalism was reported. Life expectancy plummeted from 35 to 29 years in some areas. Food prices soared, doubling within months in England. Even King Edward I struggled to procure bread. Scholars link the famine to the onset of the Little Ice Age, driven by solar activity cycles, slowed ocean currents like the Gulf Stream, and volcanic eruptions, possibly Tarawera in New Zealand. Despite improved weather by 1317, weakened populations remained vulnerable to disease, paving the way for the Black Death. The Black Death of 1347 to 1352. From 1347 to 1352, Europe was devastated by the Black Death, which killed 75 to 200 million people. Originating in East China, the plague swept through Asia, Europe, and North Africa. Dark spots on the bodies of victims inspired its name. 3 plague types, bubonic, pneumonic, and septicemic, ravaged populations. Bubonic plague was lethal in half of cases, while pneumonic and septicemic infections were nearly always fatal. Efforts to impose quarantines failed as panic-stricken people fled, spreading the disease further. Mass burials became the norm as authorities struggled to manage the dead. Cities emptied, trust in governments and churches waned, and societal norms disintegrated. Epidemics and famines in the New World. The Columbian Exchange introduced deadly diseases to the Americas. With no immunity to European pathogens, indigenous populations were devastated. Smallpox, influenza, and other viruses wiped out entire communities. In 1520, Spanish troops brought smallpox to present-day Mexico, killing 200,000 to 300,000 Aztecs, including Emperor Cuitlahuac. The 30 Years' War, 1618-1648. This prolonged conflict ravaged Europe, causing widespread famine and disease. Sparked by Emperor Ferdinand II's attempt to enforce Catholicism, the war saw marauding armies and desperate peasants wreak havoc. Entire regions were depopulated, typhus and plague ran rampant, and the Little Ice Age compounded agricultural failures. An estimated 20% of Europe's population perished. The year without a summer, 1816. In 1783, Iceland's Laki volcano erupted, spewing 42 billion tons of lava and toxic gases. The resulting famine killed 80% of Iceland's sheep and half its cattle. Poisonous mists spread across Europe, Asia, and North America, causing respiratory illnesses and crop failures. In 1816, Tambora in Indonesia erupted, ejecting enough ash to block sunlight globally. Snow fell in June and July in New England, and relentless rains destroyed European harvests, leading to widespread hunger. The 20th century's hellish period. The first half of the 20th century was marked by World War I, the Russian Revolution, and the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918, which killed 20–40 million people in just 1 year. The Great Depression of 1929 followed, plunging millions into poverty. In Ukraine, the Soviet regime orchestrated the Holodomor, a famine that killed 4–7 million people. The Great Terror of the 1930s claimed countless lives, targeting intellectuals, scientists, and cultural figures. Almost immediately after, World War II erupted, killing 50–80 million people and displacing millions more. The Holocaust, forced migrations, and political purges left indelible scars. The worst year in history. According to historian Michael McCormick, 536 CE was the worst year in history, heralding famine, plague, and global cooling. Disagree? Share your thoughts in the comments.